Hi, I'm Elvis Presley.
She met him as a child.
Why our daughter? What are your intentions?
I'm gonna show you off.
The inside story of the king of rock and roll by the girl who became his queen.
Nothing you can do is going to stop me from going to Grace.
Elvis and Me, the movie, Sunday, 7:30.
Next, ITN News.
Beleaguered by boardroom battles? How to Get Ahead in Business could be the book for you. What says Terry Venables?
I wish I'd read this before.
Arthur's invited his 3 nephews round for a relaxing evening. A bite of their favourite cat food, and then a video. But unfortunately, the film proved to be a little too scary. Arthur's. No other cat food is worthy of the name.
The Wilkinson sword Protector. A razor so sharp that it has to be kept behind bars. Wilkinson sword's protective guard wires ensure that while the shave is close, there is no safer wet shave. The safest wet shave ever from Wilkinson sword. Protector, only from Wilkinson sword.
Oh, did you want that space? No, you have the space. What? We'll park over there. Oh, really?
We'll walk. It's a lovely day.
Not for long.
Do you want to borrow my brolly?
I'm taking people. You must have a pension with Scottish
Amicable?
I hate them!
So don't forget, in a world of chaos, it pays to be amicable.
This weekend at MFI, an extra 10% off already discounted prices in every department. Trouble is, this offer must end on Holiday Monday.
Important news for vaginal thrush sufferers. You can now buy Canesten without a prescription, and it works overnight. So if you get thrush, get Canesten.
The whole idea of Langans is that we wanted to achieve a classless restaurant. You have one table in dinner suits and the next table in jeans. It's colourful. It all looks very disjointed.
I love it.
That isn't by accident.
On table what? How did he get it?
I wouldn't say I was a businessman. I think I've learnt that I run a business. Yours needs a little bit of effort. You all right, sir? Michael Caine always says that when people come in the restaurant, they're the stars. And then when they sit down, they become the audience. Well, Peter's contribution, with Peter, it was dangerous. Langan's Brasserie signed up with American Express 16 years ago. It was a great benefit to us. 15 years ago, I personally became a member. I let the restaurant try it out first.
The American Express card is welcomed at Langan's and other dangerous places.
Michael Jackson. Could his dream world turn into a nightmare? This superstar has given love and kindness to children the world over. Now, the father of one of the boys Michael Jackson wanted to adopt talks exclusively to the News of the World. Read Jacko, The Secret Rooms, a News of the World exclusive this Sunday.
Can he really travel to the moon, to the bottom of a volcano, or through time itself? The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, tonight at 10:30.
Two of the world's greatest popular music success stories, starting on 2 consecutive weekends. ITV presents The Jacksons and Sinatra.
Nance, this is the moment.
What about us?
This family is going to stay together.
2 ITV events. The Jacksons starts next Sunday and Sinatra the following Sunday.
Good evening, the news and sport from ITN. Tonight's headlines.
Half of the trapped UN aid convoy in Mostar is allowed to leave. 3 people are seriously hurt in a helicopter crash in Oxfordshire. And Michael Jackson salutes the fans but has no comment on sex abuse allegations.
And in sport, Eric Cantona scores on his return to action as United stay top.
Half of the United Nations aid convoy trapped in the Bosnian city of Mostar has been allowed to leave. But the Spanish peacekeeping troops who went in with the convoy are still there. The breakthrough came after the UN promised to establish a permanent force in Mostar.
After nearly 3 days, the aid convoy rolled out of Mostar. An agreement of sorts worked out between the UN and Muslim authorities. But it wasn't easy. Local people insisting that the token UN presence of Spanish troops should remain in the city to deter further Croat attacks. And tonight, the UN's Cedric Thornberry, who spent 3 days as a virtual hostage, is discussing the possibility of keeping troops permanently in East Mostar.
I'm not quite sure what mandate we have or would need in Mostar. So all we can do in this meeting, I think, is to identify the needs of the two sides.
The convoy is now out, but the standoff between the UN and the Muslims in East Mostar continues. And this is what the Muslims fear most, fresh assaults by the Croats on their positions. There was more heavy fighting in the city today. Muslims believe without the UN, they're incapable of holding the Croats back. British lorry drivers on the convoy are convinced their main role had been to provide a human shield rather than to relieve a starving city.
I mean, the way they stopped us was very clearly orchestrated, and I believe they probably planned it out in advance.
And they know too the food they brought in is still waiting to be distributed. But tonight, they're happy to be out. Jim Buchanan, ITN, near Mostar.
Well, elsewhere in Bosnia, the warring factions met in separate assemblies today to vote on the latest Geneva peace plan. The Bosnian Serb leader recommended acceptance of the deal, and his self-styled parliament overwhelmingly approved. But Bosnia's Muslim assembly won't agree to it unless there are crucial changes. And the Bosnian Croats adjourned, demanding more territory than the plan allows them. Here, a pilot has been praised for the way he struggled to control his helicopter as it crashed in a field in Oxfordshire. After the accident, he ran more than a mile for help. 3 people were seriously injured, but police say it could have been much worse.
Emergency services say they cannot believe how any of the 7 people on board managed to survive the crash. Tonight, their survival is being put down to the efforts of the pilot, who struggled to control the helicopter as it plunged into a field at Noke, a few miles north of Oxford. After crashing, the pilot comforted his injured passengers, then ran 1.5 miles to the nearest farmhouse to raise the alarm.
Having to leave people he was concerned for in an injured state and to run 1.5 miles to this farm to actually raise the alarm was absolutely magnificent.
The helicopter was flying from Canesten in North Wales to Oxford when the pilot lost control. 3 passengers, including a young boy, walked away from the crash. 2 others were taken to hospital by ambulance, but a woman in her 20s lay trapped for 1.5 hours before being airlifted to hospital by police helicopter. An inquiry will now be held into what caused this accident, but first indications suggest the aircraft didn't suffer engine failure. Rather, it went into a spin as it was flying low while approaching Oxford Airport. Adrian Britton, ITN, Oxford.
The first privately run passenger service on the British rail network is closing down following heavy losses. The Scottish company Stagecoach launched the service between London and Aberdeen in a blaze of publicity. The former Conservative Party chairman, Kenneth Baker, has revealed that John Major ignored an urgent appeal to help Margaret Thatcher during her final days in office. In memoirs serialised in the Sunday Times, Mr. Baker says Mr. Major remained literally silent on Margaret's behalf, while his own supporters worked feverishly behind the scenes for his election. The actress Elizabeth Taylor has arrived in Singapore to give moral support to pop star Michael Jackson. He's still refusing to talk publicly about the sex abuse allegations levelled against him.
The Michael Jackson World Tour is on the road again. Today he arrived in Singapore. His hideaway here, the colonial splendour of the famous Raffles Hotel. Rumours of an evening balcony appearance drew an excited crowd of fans. And their wait was not in vain. But in stark contrast to his stage appearances, this was a subdued, exhausted-looking Jackson, showing the strain of the child abuse scandal that's engulfed him. A few waves, but no words. And then for this bizarre superstar who's made privacy an obsession, it was back to guarded seclusion. Among the delighted crowd, 2 British fans who are following their idol around the world.
On this tour I've been to 47 altogether, all over the world, all over Europe and Japan, and the other day in Bangkok.
So you still support him through his troubles?
Of course, yeah.
So what does he mean to you?
Just everything. I mean, I sold my car, my Michael collection, autographs, everything to come here, to follow him around the world, because it's just what I want to do.
For these young fans, just a glimpse of Michael Jackson away from the stage is an increasing rarity these days. But his very presence in Singapore indicates he's prepared to carry on with this tour and brave out the allegations. Mark Austin, ITN, Singapore.
And in Los Angeles, police are investigating blackmail allegations against the father of the boy who's accused the pop star of sex abuse. Detectives say they failed to uncover evidence justifying any charges against Jackson.
If the big names in Hollywood have been slow to show support for Michael Jackson, the same can't be said for his fans.
Michael, I love you. Karen, I love you.
And at his Neverland Ranch, former employees of the singer are now coming forward.
I was with him every single day.
Janie Ruth Newkirk was house manager on the estate for several years.
Doors were always open. Everything was always very open. And there was no hiding, there was no secrets, there was no sneaking around. There was nothing like that. Michael had his space, and he respected everyone else's space, and he would have never spent the night with a child.
But despite a growing groundswell of support for the singer, the charges, even though unsubstantiated, have badly damaged Jackson.
It's an example of the charge becoming a fact. I mean, you know, no matter how many times you say allegedly.
And now there's news that the father of the boy whose allegations of sexual abuse started this whole affair is himself being investigated by police over an alleged extortion threat to the singer. For Michael Jackson today, the pressure seems to be lessening a little. Peter Sharp, ITN in Los Angeles.
John Burt, the Director General of the BBC, has defended himself against the latest criticism of his management style. Mr. Burt said he thought the BBC was in surprisingly good creative health.
John Burt's management style at BBC has come in for repeated criticism in recent weeks, much of it from within the corporation. Last night he was branded a Dalek in an Armani suit by radical playwright Dennis Potter. In an impassioned address to the Edinburgh Television Festival, Mr. Potter suggested the BBC should be split up and its hierarchy removed.
I fear the time is near when we must save not the BBC from itself, but public service broadcasting from the BBC.
Today, the Director General dismissed that criticism as being bleakly pessimistic with no basis in reality.
Dennis Potter's view of the contemporary BBC is simply not true. We are an institution which has seized control of our own destiny. We are in strong and healthy condition.
But he acknowledged the corporation was going through difficult and painful internal changes. However, Mr. Burt maintained staff and viewers would see a better, more creative BBC as a result. Sandy McIntyre, ITN, Edinburgh.
Laura Davis, the 5-year-old Manchester girl given a liver and bowel transplant in America last year, is facing another big transplant operation. Doctors in Pittsburgh say Laura's entire digestive system will have to be replaced if she doesn't respond to a new drug. Hundreds of miners have joined the funeral of Peter Alcock, one of the 3 men killed in the tunnel collapse at Bilsthorpe Colliery. The service was held at Eakring in Nottinghamshire, just a short distance from the pit. Francis Marnell, an unemployed London man, has appeared in court charged with the murder of the Berkshire businesswoman Jean Bradley. He was remanded till next month. Miss Bradley was stabbed to death last March as she returned to her car in West London. Thousands of people have marched through Washington to relive the day 30 years ago when Martin Luther King changed America with his "I Have a Dream" speech. That speech helped bring civil rights for blacks.
In memory of a man and in honour of his vision, tens of thousands of Americans marched through the Capitol. Today's march is called for jobs, justice and peace, where 30 years ago 250,000 people had marched for basic political rights, the end of segregation and a dream.
I have a dream. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
But for many, that dream remains as elusive as ever. Today's black Americans may be politically enfranchised, but many remain economically segregated, stalked by poverty and violence in inner-city slums, where the unemployment rate now runs at double the level of 30 years ago. A theme picked up on by speaker after speaker at today's rally.
The conditions under which many people live in this country have gotten worse, not better.
30 years ago, we could not check into the Hyatts and the Hiltons. Today, we all have the right to check in, but too few of us have the means of checking out.
Today's marchers know that while the battle for political equality may largely have been won, huge inequities remain, which mean that Martin Luther King's dream of 30 years ago is still far from becoming a reality. Jennifer Nadel, ITN, Washington.
Now it's time to join David Bobin for the sport.
Manchester United have maintained their impressive start to the new season. A convincing 3-1 victory at Southampton was enough to keep them clear at the top of the Carling Premiership. Eric Cantona scored a brilliant goal to mark his return after a knee injury. Lee Sharp and Dennis Irwin were the other United scorers. Ian Wright scored both goals as Arsenal beat Everton 2-0 at Highbury. Good news for the England manager Graham Taylor, who announces his squad on Monday for the World Cup qualifier against Poland. And Sheffield Wednesday have ended their scoring drought thanks to Mark Bright. His goal in the 1-1 draw at Chelsea was the first Wednesday have scored in the Premiership this season. So, confirmation that United lead the table tonight by 1 point, with Liverpool and Arsenal ahead of Norwich and Ipswich. In Scotland, there was a real upset at Ibrox, where the Rangers manager Walter Smith saw his side lose at home in the league for the first time since March last year, Kilmarnock winning 2-1. In the English First Division, Crystal Palace put 5 goals past Portsmouth this afternoon, but it's Middlesbrough who are still at the top of the table.
Middlesbrough haven't dropped a point yet this season, and they took the lead at the Molineux after just 3 minutes. But Wolves, who started the day third from top, equalised within a minute and then took the lead when new captain Jeff Thomas powered through to beat a stranded goalkeeper. After the break, it was Middlesbrough's turn to fight back, Hendry getting his second. And a draw would probably have done justice to both sides, but the Wolves goalkeeper had different ideas, leaving Middlesbrough top this evening. Crystal Palace have had an indifferent start to the season, and it looked like continuing that way today. Warren Neal putting Portsmouth 1 up after only 6 minutes. But Palace soon began to run the game, going in 2-1 up at half-time. And when they came out, Pompey began to fall apart, Gareth Southgate scoring the goal of the match. But the game really belonged to Chris Armstrong, whose hat-trick destroyed the visitors, and gave a warning that Palace don't intend to stay in the First Division for more than a season. Leicester City were unlucky not to go up themselves last season, but today at Filbert Street the luck was on their side, the Millwall defence kind enough to lend a hand. And with David Speedy and Julian Joachim, Leicester City will be hoping they've got the right blend of youth and experience. Joachim showing why he's likely to be playing in the Premier Division in the very near future, with or without his Leicester teammates.
Motor racing, and the World Championship leader Alain Prost is once again in pole position for tomorrow's Belgian Grand Prix. Prost beat Damon Hill's best time from yesterday and then went on to record a new qualifying lap record time. It's his 11th pole of the season in only 12 races. Hill improved his time from the day before but wasn't fast enough to catch Prost. He'll take second place on the grid. And Germany's Michael Schumacher, driving a Benetton, was third fastest.
And that's it for tonight. From all of us at ITN, good night.
Good night.
Hello, good evening. There's a weakening weather front moving south across Britain, but even so, there'll still be more sunshine on tomorrow's chart than rain. It's basically a dry and bright story for most of us, not just for tomorrow, but for Bank Holiday Monday too. The thicker cloud at the moment is across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and down into northern England. The rain is already very patchy, and it's likely to die out even more as we go through the next 24 hours. Further south, some clearer skies, temperatures dipping to around 9 degrees, and one or two mist and fog patches around to watch out for too. On to tomorrow, that thicker band of cloud coming a little bit further south, but patchy rain dying out even further. So even through that band of cloud, you'll still have mostly dry weather, and perhaps even one or two brighter spells during the afternoon. Certainly some brighter spells on either side of that, dry in the south and fairly bright. Further north, maybe one or two odd showers, but they'll be confined to the far north by the afternoon, and some sunshine to look forward to. The temperatures during the afternoon, well, not too bad. High teens for most of us. 19 is about 66. And on Monday, a similar sort of day. Quite a bit of bright sunshine around. Just a little thicker cloud, this time up in the far northwest with some drizzle there. A lot of dry and bright weather around. Good night.
Join TMTV for a superstar lineup all next week with the notorious J.R. Ewing and the outrageous Dame Edna Everett. Heartthrob Michael Ball joins us on Tuesday.